Job creation is the central challenge confronting India today. And to this end, a slew of new incentives and schemes have been rolled out by Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman. What we'll do is use the next 40 minutes to ask a super sharp panel of experts on whether the new schemes that have been created will actually succeed. There are massive headwinds in terms of artificial intelligence, in terms of increasing automation, in terms of our labor force not having the right level of skilling, which in any case confront monumental challenges. How should India navigate the job challenge in the midst of these choppy waters? Join me in welcoming to the India Today, Business Today Budget Roundtable, Mr. Jayant Sinha. Thank you so much for joining us. One of the sharpest economic minds in politics and outside. Flanking him, we have Rajiv Ramani, chairperson of Ernst & Young and soon to be the president of the Confederation of Indian Industry. And we've got Sanjeev Bhikchandani, who wears many hats, but we hope to tap into his insights as the founder of Naukri.com in this particular conversation. So thank you all for joining us. I want to start by asking Jayant Sinha first, why you think that the set of incentives that have been introduced by Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman will actually succeed, and if so, how, in creating incremental jobs? You have a certain job outlook that all companies will have. The question is, why do you believe they will create additional jobs over and beyond what companies were already hoping to create this year? Mr. Sinha.
Thank you very much, Rahul, for giving me an opportunity to speak on what is, for all of us, I think, the number one priority, which is to take our young workforce, take people in our labor force and really give them the kinds of jobs that they really want. And I'm very happy to be on this very distinguished panel with two exemplary job creators to discuss that. So let's really focus in on the budget. And as far as I'm concerned, I think the budget has got it right, very, very right, in fact, on three important dimensions. Number one, the focus is on formal sector jobs, so that people get productive employment in high quality companies like the top 500 companies in the country. Number one. Number two, the scale is enormous. So we are talking about crores of people getting jobs through the various three different schemes. And we are talking about spending 2 lakh crores over the next 5 years on that. So the scale is enormous because the challenges that we are confronting on employment are also quite sizable. And number three, the focus is very much on skill development, apprenticeship, getting people into the workforce and making them employable as well. So when you look at the budget announcements, they're right on target because they address each of these three very, very important points. And I'll conclude, Rahul, by saying the following. We have economists that talk about employment, labor force participation rates, numbers of people coming into the workforce. We talk about schemes. But at the end of the day, for a politician like me, it really boils down to कि भोला महतो जो टाटी झरिया में है या गीता और राव जो पतरातू में है, real people are able to get real jobs that meet their expectations. तो भोला महतो और गीता और राव के लिए हम लोग क्या कर रहे हैं? That is the acid test.
Okay, Siddharth.
Mr. Sinha, the only direct benefit transfer scheme, a new one that has been introduced in this budget, is the employment linked incentive scheme. There is no other DBT scheme which your governments in the past have made popular. The question that a lot of people are asking, with some of the caveats that have been put in, is the intent to only formalize jobs that exist in the informal sector? Because at this threshold of salary, for example, or the 15,000 rupees internship to be paid in 3 installments, the numbers are very low. And if you look at the overall salaried employees in India, a lot of people after the budget are saying, who is this scheme intended for? Would you care to expand on that?
My understanding is that this is very much focused on formal sector jobs and people coming out of the informal workforce, whether that is in urban areas or rural areas, getting productive employment in the organized industry, informal industry. So I think that's really the focus. And as far as the scheme itself is concerned, let me just add 2 additional points for your consideration. Number one, Most schemes in government evolve over time, as they should, because as you put them in practice, you find things that work, things that don't work that well, and you refine and iterate it and make it much, much better. If you look at Narega, or you look at even Kisan Samman Nidhi and so on, there have been lots of refinements, improvements, new ways of looking at eligibility, etc. So these schemes will evolve as they should evolve. So that's one very important point. The other important point is that the 15,000 rupees and all of these incentives are meant to be what the government is contributing, what is happening. I'm sure state governments will top that up as well. This is really a central government effort, so state governments will top it up. We've seen that happen in Ayushman Bharat, so I expect it to happen here as well. And then companies can obviously do more as well also, whether they do it through CSR or through their own wage and salary policies. So I think it gives you a lot of flexibility. Again, as I said, the scale, the focus on training, and of course, the notion that we are going to get people into the formal workforce. These are the important attributes. These are the important principles to follow.
Mr. Vimani, we last spoke on the afternoon of the budget, and that time the announcements were still fresh. You've now had an opportunity to let the dust settle, speak to different people, your own team across different sectors. You know, if you were asked now to give an early assessment of the potential efficacy of the new incentives that have been rolled out in terms of being able to create new jobs, what's your outlook? Do you think this will actually create new jobs, or do you think, it's a good effort, but there may not be too many new jobs at the end of the year?
Yeah, Rahul, I think, so if you just quickly look at the budget in two layers, one, for creating new jobs, you need a healthy economy. And I think this budget does focus a lot on macroeconomic stability, strong government balance sheet, and so on and so forth. So I think that's very good, because that keeps the interest rates low, that creates the resilience. And long-term investors then want to invest in the economy because they see the buoyancy, because you need investments to create jobs. And I think it's a big tick on that. On the second one, I would say I will break this into two, and I think the difference between when we spoke immediately after the budget and now, I would say the most exciting part and the most challenging part on this one is the skilling. Because what's really happening right now is that one is, I mean, there are a lot of people who want jobs, and there are a lot of companies who are also looking for jobs as they're expanding. I mean, you would have seen some press announcements, press interviews from some very large companies, some of the largest companies, not having adequate people to fulfill their order books or whatever else it is. So I think the most interesting part is the focus on skilling, because it's very significant. 1 crore people, almost 4,000 at an average, if you were to say 4,000 per year per company, 500 companies if you look at it. I think that's the one that's caught the imagination of a lot of people. Obviously, it's going to be an execution challenge.
No, but just take what you're saying. If 4,000 people land up as interns, even if it's a big company, will the company have the capacity to actually upskill these people, oversee those internships, see that they're being adequately trained, so at the end of the year they're employable?
So they are all, so 4,000 is an average. Maybe there are some who will be happy with 200, there'll be some who can probably absorb 9,000, 10,000. So 4,000 is an average. I think in some sectors, like manufacturing, companies that are in the EPC space, their ability to absorb will probably be greater. In some other sectors, maybe someone in consumer goods and others, maybe their ability to absorb may be lower. But I think so therefore the execution is very, very important, Rahul. First is the demand side assessment on where these jobs will be available. I think that's very important. And a lot of work needs to be done there. The second is, how are you going to get 20 lakh youngsters between the age of 21, 24, who are happy to take an internship of 5,000 rupees a month? Where will you get those people? So there are people there, but just sourcing them and encouraging them to travel outside of their villages, towns, or cities and going there. Just getting that right. Third, then getting the companies, this right set of companies there, then ensuring that they're getting skilled and skilling certification. And for me, the most important test is, at the end of the day, those people have to get the jobs. because they have worked for a year, they've probably worked in a very good company. That company may not have the ability to absorb all the talent, and suddenly they are back. So therefore, how do you make it transparent? So if an MSME is looking for hiring jobs, and suppose that MSME is in the manufacturing sector, he'll have top 20 manufacturing companies. Or if they are looking at welders or some people like that, they have top 10 companies, EPC companies, other companies where people have got trained in. And they can therefore from there, they can absorb the talent. So I think if we can get this right, you can impact the life of potentially at 1 crore young children. Now, if you don't get it right, it may be, even if it's 20 lakhs, it's a big number. So I don't think there is one silver bullet that is going to change. As Jayant very rightly said, it's an iterative process, but it is bold, it hits at the right spot, it's going to be a real execution challenge, and how we engage industry and how do we leverage technology to get this executed will be very critical. But it's a real game changer.
So, and you're absolutely right, Rajiv, that there are many challenges. One of the first things that's happened after the budget is the government is now moving towards one common database, which we still lack. Sanjeev, bringing you in and viewers and everyone who is here, when we thought of the session, once Sanjeev agreed, it became Modinomics. And the reason is...
I'm going to charge you royalty for this.
Okay, there's one very important piece of data for all of you to consider, and Sanjeev knows this sector. Since 2017-18, the total number of what is called salaried jobs is around 118 million. Of the entire labor force in India, roughly 20% are formal salaried jobs. The rest are outside it. This data shows that 118 million as a number has basically remained more or less constant. And another set of data, Sanjeev, India Ratings said that 6 million unincorporated enterprises were shut down post 2016 and 16 million jobs were lost. The question therefore I'm asking you is that all of this put together over the next 5 years, is it only going to sort of replace what was the gap that was created, or will there be net incremental new job creation?
So, the most honest answer I can give is I don't know. Okay, but listen, I'll come back to the earlier thing of internship. I have something to say there. You see, it's really important. See, the macro is fine, we can talk about it, but it's really important to focus on the micro. What is it that causes people to acquire a skill? It's repeated practice. Any skill, repeated practice. You want to get into IIT, like Jayant did, you study a mathematical concept, maths concept, a little bit, and then you practice 500 sums, problems on that concept. You get better at it, you acquire the skill, right? So it's repeated practice. Now, repeated practice for skills that are used in jobs are typically acquired on the job, right? Not in the classroom. To a certain extent classroom, but mostly on the job, right? So if you open a skill development center, let's say in rural, in the district headquarters, say in Jharkhand, and you train people on how to repair mobile phones, and say, now go to Bombay and get a job, you will not get a job. And that was a problem with the NSTC model, right? You were training people in classrooms, hoping they would get jobs. They did not get jobs, not enough of them, right? So what you need, this internship program, is not just exposure and mindset change, all that. No, they will acquire skills by simply being there. Now, मैं दो कहानियाँ सुनाऊंगा आपको. So, a few years back, we were approached by this lesser-known business school in Delhi called Wigan and Lake College. Right? Now, before they approached us, we never heard of it. They were operating out of Scenic Farm somewhere. Right? And they came and said, listen, we've got a MBA program where the structure is like this. The classes are from 8 a.m. to 12 a.m. At 1 p.m., they have to work in a company. So will you please take some interns? तो हमने मना कर दिया, ये क्या model है, right? Half day, right? They kept coming back. Finally, we said, okay, de do. And we went for interviews and we selected a few. Now, these people came. They would come by 1 o'clock. Each of them was attached to a salesperson, an area manager. The job was just tail the area manager for the first 3 months. Observe, think. And the area manager was told, isko kuch kaam dete rehna, let's see what happens. So they learned first, proposal kaise likhte hain. They would go on sales calls with them. They would keep quiet in the sales call. They would help them writing proposals. They would draft emails to send to the client, all that. After 3 months, they got proficient at that. And then they were allowed to speak in sales calls. By that time, they got familiar with the product and how to sell it. Because 3 months, they tailed the salesperson. Right? There was no formal, internship program. It was just tail the guy, right? At the end of 6 months, they were allowed to submit, and they got into servicing calls, not sales calls, which is, existing client has a problem, fix it. Right? They began to interact with clients without the senior person being there. At the end of 6 months, they said, okay, you can make independent sales calls on small clients. Right? And they began to generate sales. At the end of 9 months, we had the head of Delhi branch saying, yeah, just give them permanent offer, you want to drop out of the MBA program and come and join. And we absorbed all of them. So what happens in the internship, right, is people actually acquire skills by simply being there, observing, doing that. How does an automobile mechanic develop? He becomes a mundu.
But how many such interns did you have?
No?
How many such
So
interns?
our company, see, we don't have a formal program, right? This was a bit of an experiment, right? But all I'm saying is the model works, or the model can work, because we have seen it work, right? Where you are simply by being there, you are acquiring skills. By being there, you are getting supporters and allies in our system who fight for you, because they were saying, we want to hire this guy, right? If you are hardworking, sincere, and you become decent at your work, you will get absorbed. Okay. Now a couple of hours can take 50, 100. I don't know how many we can take in a year. Okay. But maybe more. I do not know. But all I'm saying is that the internship system can work in developing skills and talent when people were earlier half-baked. Angrezi aati thi. We need that in our job as a salesperson talking to clients. But other stuff they didn't have, right? Another example I'll give you. There's an organization called the Delhi School of Communication. I don't know if you've heard of it. It trains people for the advertising and media and public relations industry. Simple concept. 7 to 1:30 classes, 2:30 they come for an internship every day. And they get them internships in advertising agencies, by and large. At the end of the program, they all get absorbed. Now, फायदा क्या है एम्प्लॉयर के लिए? फायदा ये है, you are getting in semi-skilled kind of talent, right, at a salary lower than you would have paid
Sure.
for a full MBA.
What internship fee did you pay?
I don't recall, yeah. But it was below what we pay a full-fledged management trainee.
Sure. So we get that. Now, Jayanji, the internship stroke apprenticeship program has certain visible advantages, and then it's about the rollout. I want to spend a moment on employment-linked incentives. Now, you've been a high flyer in corporate street. The fact is that most companies tend to have a hiring outlook for the year. If the government throws some financial incentives, which in a corporate setup aren't very substantial, just about like 15,000 rupees for a job of less than 1 lakh, will just the mere presence of such an incentive increase any corporate's appetite to hire more? Or is it that because the government post the general elections was under pressure, it had to be seen to be doing something to deal with the jobs challenge, therefore you are trying something in the fervent hope that if it doesn't help at max, at least it has some impact at the base?
Things will definitely improve, Rahul, and I think it will have impact. It depends a lot on the sector. Certain sectors like construction, L&T for example, has a tremendous need for trained plumbers, electricians, bricklayers, etc. And
No,
they
answer my question. That's not. I'm saying the government is giving you like a 15,000 rupee incentive over 3 months. Now saying hire more because I'm giving you this incentive. I'm saying, does this incentive work?
It does. That's what I
How?
was just going
Where?
to tell you. In some of these blue collar types of formal roles, like an L&T hiring plumbers and electricians, because it does make a difference on the margin. But let's take a step back and let's really try and understand what is it that we are solving for. What we are really trying to solve for is the mismatch between the crores of Bhola Mehtos and Geeta Arans and the very few Naukris that we have. So Sanjeev was exactly right to say that, you learn on the job, and by bringing in these people from this, business school and training them, they became actually quite productive. The problem is that there are too few Naukris and too many people who want these apprenticeship positions and then eventually a formal sector job. So really the big picture issue is the supply-demand mismatch between the number of formal jobs. As Siddharth said, only 20% of the workforce is in formal jobs. It's in salaried employment. And every Bhola Mehto and every Geeta Arao wants salaried employment. But we are just not creating enough formal sector jobs to be able to absorb not just the 1 crore people we are getting every year, but remember that there's a huge backlog as well. आप किसी भी युवा से पूछिए कि आप कर क्या रहे हैं, अधिकांश लोग कहेंगे कि हम तैयारी में। अब तैयारी क्या है भाई? आप तैयारी कर रहे हैं भाई कंपटीशन के लिए, कितने सालों से तैयारी कर रहे हैं? बहुत सालों से तैयारी कर रहे हैं। तो ये तैयारी करने वाले युवा जो हैं, इनका इतना बड़ा बैकलॉग बन गया, उनको भी तो अब्सॉर्ब करना है। 10 साल से लोग तैयारी कर रहे हैं, तो 10 साल से जो करोड़ों को नौकरियां नहीं मिली, वो इंतजार में है। So we have that backlog, plus we have 1 crore more coming in every year. We just don't have enough Naukris to be able to solve that supply-demand imbalance.
Let me ask that same question to Mr. Bigchandani. I'm trying to understand whether the principle of this financial incentive, in your view, could incentivize companies to hire more, or do you think it's just like trying something because something has to be tried?
No, I think, look, the government will try 20 things, right? Maybe 5 will work. But if those 5 can scale up, then you have a good shot, okay, at achieving something. Now, will a whole bunch of people hire a lot of employees because they're getting a subsidy of 5,000 rupees? It may happen in some cases, it may not happen in some cases, right? We have to wait and watch. But you see, Jayant raised an important point. भाई सबको सरकारी नौकरी चाहिए, तो वो तैयारी में है. Now we also invest in startups. So I'll talk about 2 companies that we have invested in. The first is Zomato. Right? Now Zomato के पास 4-5 लाख rider हैं. They are not in employment, but they are earning a livelihood. और वो 25,000 रुपए कमा सकते हैं हर महीने, which is not bad, right? But Zomato says we are finding it hard to scale beyond 5 lakh people. I said, देश में बेरोजगारी इतनी है. No, the problem is that ये बहुत ही ज़्यादा मेहनत वाला काम है. धूप में जाओ 8-10 घंटे on your motorcycle delivering stuff. These guys want office jobs. These guys want sarkari jobs, and that's the aspiration. Now, another company we invested in is called Adda 24/7. Adda 24/7 essentially prepares young people for the entrance exam for government jobs. Now, India में कम से कम 500-600 सरकारी नौकरियों के entrance exam होंगे across states, across the center, across ministries, across wherever, right? And there are lakhs of people who come to Adda 24/7 to practice. But the moment you offer them a chance to get a job in a private company, they're not interested.
Not interested.
Very few are, some are, but very few. The sarkari naukri is still so aspirational in India for various reasons. Yeah, sit at home. But I will.
And let me just put in a fact here, Rahul, which is that, Siddharth mentioned that we have about 20% of people in salaried employment. Of those 20%, about 40% out of the 110 million or so, about 45 million, 4.5 crores are actually in government employees of some kind or the other. So government is a big employer, but at the end of the day, it's still only in a workforce of 50-60 crores, it's only about 4-5 crore people. Again, so there's a tremendous supply-demand mismatch between people wanting government jobs and actually the number of government jobs in the economy.
Rajiv, I want to come to you. Since Sanjeev spoke about Zomato, I can say that for a Delhi University College graduate, I know this, they offered 30,000 rupees as a monthly salary. The question, Rajiv, to you, and I have some numbers here, less than 10%.
Who offered? Who offered?
Zomato.
In what role?
Sales role. Less than 10% of these salaried jobs, and all of you should focus on these numbers, earn 50,000 or more. And 2/3 of this salaried workforce is at 20,000 or lesser per month. And only 44% have social security. So, Rajiv, the question, because you deal with the best and the biggest companies, those who actually employs in lakhs of numbers. Is the government trying to formalize job creation, or is it trying to create? Because whenever I look at this data, it seems to me that there is no new job creation that will happen on account of this money that is going to be spent.
So, so I think if you look at the schemes, and responding to your question and the point Rahul mentioned, will this really be a nudge that the government wants it to be? I mean, that can be said for all incentives, whether, PLI is the nudge, can you not do without PLI, if it's attractive enough, what's the issue? So all these things are experiments, nudges, but you have to look at each of these schemes differently. So the one scheme is there are three sort of interesting features of these schemes. One is a lot of them are for first jobs. Secondly, a lot of them are focused on manufacturing. So I think, and third is, it is all linked to EPFO, so it's about formalization. So it is targeted at people who have just graduated or have graduated but have not got a job, trying to get them in the job. This issue of formalization is a big issue. Through the labor code, they had tried to do some more, but unfortunately it didn't get implemented fully. So I think that entire formalization is the second objective. And third is in manufacturing to create competitiveness, especially one of the schemes that was there, where they will be paying almost 24% over a period of, for a period of 3 years, if you are hiring more than 25% of your employees. So anyone who is significantly looking at setting up a new manufacturing unit or doubling their units, it's not an insignificant number. And then you have one more scheme which says that we'll pay you 3,000 rupees a month if you hire any fresher, kind of thing, as long as you're net. So generally it would say, if you're hiring, it's government for 2 years is subsidizing 3 to 4%, 5%. So hopefully it encourages people more to get there. I think, listen, formalization is very important, but I also think this is for net new jobs. But formalization is very important, and I think we have to, and through internship and through everything, one thing which is very good about internship is it exposes a lot of people who, and everyone in the panel said the same thing, that the yearning for a government job is just huge, especially if you go to smaller cities and towns. So at least it exposes through the internship program to people to get into other companies and say, okay, even the private sector is not as bad, not as challenging as the image that has been built. So I think the government is definitely trying to see formalization, people coming out of colleges, either getting internships or incentives. If you are in a small town and you've got a job letter, do you want to go, you don't want to go, okay, if you actually go, सरकार आपको 15,000 रुपए देगी, एक बार जाकर देख कर तो आओ कैसा है, तो वो आपको, that nudge is also given. So I think they're trying to attack different, from an economic standpoint, from a psychological standpoint, from a skilling standpoint, but formalization, net new jobs is important, but formalization is equally important, and jobs for the younger people are the ones that are the big focus area.
One of the principal challenges in India, Jayanji, is about the kind of jobs that the youth crave. And we've spoken here about the clamor for government jobs, which is quite a crazy pursuit given the probability of being able to get through. Now, is there a way, because you've been in and out of government both, and you've contested from small towns, is there a way in which that psyche can be changed, or do you think this is just so deeply embedded in the Indian system that it is almost impossible to get people away from the clamor of the aspiration for a government job?
So Rahul, one thing you have to understand about us Indians, we actually don't want a job. What we really want is service. हमें चाहिए सर्विस, यानी सर्विस लग जाए. सर्विस का क्या मतलब हुआ कि आप परमानेंटली एम्प्लॉयड हैं. और जॉब में क्या है कि वो टेम्पररी भी हो सकता है. अब राजीव के साथ हम काम करें, बहुत मेरे पे प्रेशर लगाएंगे, बी प्रोडक्टिव, गेट दिस डन, गेट दैट डन. आई माइट इवन लूज अ जॉब इफ आई एम वर्किंग फॉर राजीव और संजीव. आई डोंट लाइक दैट. आई वांट सर्विस. जिंदगी भर मैं लगा हुआ हूं और ऊपर की कमाई तो है ही. सो इफ यू हैव दैट माइंडसेट, getting people out of thinking about government, getting them to think about jobs, productivity, a 21st century workforce, when the mindset is fundamentally around service, sarkari service, and that's what you see around you. You've seen a system that's grown up that way. Now, the only way to solve that problem, Rahul, is we need to massively increase investments, given where we are. And of course, government is trying to do that with capex and so on. But just to give you a good sort of benchmark, China created for its young workforce at the same time in their development massive numbers of jobs in manufacturing. What was their investment rate? Their investment rate was not 28, 29% of GDP. Their investment rate was 40%, 10% GDP higher. Now 10% of GDP higher in India is an extraordinarily large number. Our GDP is 330 trillion rupees. So you would be putting 30 trillion rupees, 30 lakh crores into investment in the private sector to be able to create those kinds of jobs that have the characteristics of formalization, as Rajiv said, which are like service in that sense as well. So unless we are massively going to increase investment rate, and there are real macro questions on, do we have the savings rates to be able to invest that much? We need foreign capital to be able to put that much more incremental investment to work. Will foreign capital come, not come? But those are the kinds of numbers that we're talking about to get to what every Indian wants, which is good, secure employment.
But Mr. Big Chana, there's a big difference. When China was growing at a similar stage of its economic cycle, the global tailwinds were in favor of globalization, and therefore there was manufacturing which was happening. China became a manufacturing powerhouse. That's not the case any longer. Secondly, because you're so deeply embedded in the Naukri mindset, do you have some hacks on how we can attack the Sarkari Naukri mindset?
देखो सरकारी नौकरी mindset क्यों है? First of all, it's highly prestigious, and that has been going on, I think, since the British era, maybe before that, right? कि मैं collector बनूँगा. Okay, there were movies made on it. Right? Okay. Second is it's massively valuable in the dowry market. Okay, marriage market. Third, it is permanent employment. Fourth, and most importantly, at the junior levels, the government pays 3 to 4x what the private sector pays. So a school teacher in a government school will typically earn 3 to 4 times that of an equivalent teacher in a private school which is not that well known, right? Likewise for office jobs in the government. At the junior level, they pay much more than private sector.
So can we do something to change that mindset?
You can't pay them less, okay? And let me tell you, you can't pay the private sector more because that's the market. So we live with it. As simple as that.
Mr. Sinha, I wanted to come in on.
मैं एक और कहानी
Yeah,
बोलूं?
sure.
So you know, in 2003, my phone rang, right? Landline, right? And the voice at the other end said, "I am so and so. I'm Labour Commissioner, Government of Delhi. I want to speak to you." So my heart sank. I said, "Yeah, but have we messed up on some compliance? Why is the Labour Commissioner calling me up?" So he said, no, he's an IAS officer. He said, "I want to meet you because, you know, I'm in charge of all the employment exchanges of Delhi, and there are 19 of them. And, you know, you have done what we should have done. We've got, so I went to meet him. So he said, Sanjeev, हमारे पास 19 employment exchange Delhi में. We employ, I think 2,700 people, something like that, some number he gave me. And last year we placed 400 people. Okay. So I said, what is the funda? He said, देखो, we have got 3 lakh people registered with us, or 4 lakh people registered with us. They all want government jobs, right? And I said, what is the oldest registration? It is 1984. तो लोग 20 साल से हमारे रजिस्टर है कि मेरे को सरकारी नौकरी चाहिए. And I said, what happens? And nothing. So जब requirement आती है, we have to send first come first served. So I said, you will send a CV that's 20 years old, right? For a job, he'll never get it, yeah. He says, but we are bound by rules, what to do? So I said, yeah, you should sell the real estate, make malls, earn a rent, you'll employ more people that way.
That's a good point. Mr. Sinha, I want you to tell our audience and our viewers about the role that fast economic growth has played in other countries across the world in lifting people both out of poverty and creating sustainable job creation, because one of the features of this budget and the overall macro environment is that growth is slowing down and the government has chosen to remain on the path of fiscal consolidation. So how does this square up?
It squares up very well, Siddharth, because the economy is growing very strongly. Obviously, the CEA has projected 6.5 to 7%, and he's on the conservative side because virtually every other agency is projecting 7%. Now, 7% in a global environment that is in turmoil, with wars raging and digital disruption happening and so on, is quite extraordinary for us to be growing at 7%. The question is, can we absorb all those crores and crores of people at 7%? Should we be growing at 8 or 9 or 10%? And should we be increasing investment by 5 or 10% of GDP? Those are the big, huge macro issues that we have to confront. Virtually no other economy in the world has been able to do it except for China at this scale. And again, as I said, China did it by repressing consumer demand, by taking domestic savings and really putting it into manufacturing in a way that no democracy can. So we really are, as far as India is concerned, sui generis, which means we are absolutely one of a kind. We need to come up with a development model that has never been, sort of followed anywhere else in the world. Despite climate change, despite deglobalization, despite depopulation, and being a democracy, we have to create jobs at this unprecedented rate because that's what the people want, that's what the people expect. That's a very, very interesting and challenging question for us at a development model level that we need to figure out.
Rajiv, you wanted to come in.
Yeah, I have a slightly different take on this. I think when China and other economies grew, and even for India, I think last 5 years we devoted a lot on fiscal consolidation. First because of what had happened earlier with all the restructuring, then COVID. So a lot of that time was spent on fiscal consolidation. I think now the government balance sheet is in a reasonable position and trending well. And if the global markets are volatile, as all of us talked about, then you need a strong balance sheet, but you also need a strong domestic consumption story. What's happening is that domestic consumption is growing at roughly half the rate of our GDP growth, which means our GDP growth is very investment led. And a lot of that investment is front ended by the government. So I certainly feel, and all of us know that given the track record of this government and especially this team, led by the finance minister, they are very conservative in their estimates. So most of us feel that if the economy goes in the same way as it's going, probably the fiscal deficit will be 4.8% rather than 4.9%, because a lot of their estimates are conservative. They will probably not end up spending 11,000 crores in capex because we are almost four months down the year. I would have thought that some, and I don't know what, but some form of consumption stimulus, similar to what they have done in jobs, some form of consumption stimulus could be in the range of 50 to 60,000 crores, 70,000 crores, especially in rural India, could have been given. Question is, if I ask them, they would say what kind of consumption stimulus you can give which doesn't stick on, and because then it becomes almost like an annual liability. And that's the tough one, is to say actually how do you create that consumption stimulus that actually doesn't stick on. And this jobs one that way, even if it is saying that okay, it's not giving the, this is, as you said, DBT version 3.0, in some ways it's good, you know, it will 50%, 60% of this money comes back to the government.
Absolutely.
In the form of various taxes. This money is not saved. It's consumed and it comes back to the government.
So we're at the end of this session, and I want to ask very quick final words, and I'll start with Mr. Bikhchandani on if there is a young person who's still in college or towards the end of his high school watching you at this time, and since there's so much focus on skilling on the job market of the future, what would be your most relevant advice based on your deep years of experience and how to prepare for the years that lie ahead?
Somehow get some work experience. Whether as an intern, whether as a free intern, whether as a trainee, whether as a summer trainee, somehow get some work experience that will teach you a lot, teach you the extension of college, okay? But somehow get some work experience.
That's your advice. Jayanji.
My advice to all young people is read more, watch less TV, Rahul.
No, bad advice. Bad. Matsuno, not this. Something else, please. Yes, Rajiv Memani.
Yeah, I would agree with what they've said. The only other thing I would say is that I think we have embraced technology much faster than what
No, but they're already so tech savvy. In what way are you suggesting it?
No, just, you know, one is mobile phones and everything else, but just embracing technology in everything that you're doing. And secondly, apart from regular academics, also, you know, not to be averse to skilling and starting with vocational jobs to get in.
Interesting. We've had an interesting conversation. The challenges are so deep and so acute. I'm not sure that we've got all the answers, but as this panel concurred, it's good to accept that this is a central challenge and at least make some effort in the direction of trying to find these jobs. And even if we don't reach where we need to, at least we are hopefully pulling in the right direction. Mr. Jayant Sinha, Rajiv Memani, Sanjeev Bikhchandani, for joining us at the India Today, Business Today, Post-Budget Roundtable. Thank you so much. Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Thanks very much. Thank you.